We're back with Larry the Contractor guy in the series, We Are What We Hated. Some interesting things have transpired since the last time we met. But I'll let Larry deal with it because we're not sure really where this is all going to end up or how it's developing necessarily in a straight line or not. But there's things that are happening. There's no two ways about it. And Larry, I'll throw it to you. And what you had said to me before we got on is something I think you ought to share with folks as far as the import of what you're going to talk about today.
Yeah. Actually, what we're going to talk about is the development of the Fourth Reich and how, or what some people call the Nazi flight capital program, where money and bullion and precious jewels and other valuables were spirited out of Nazi Germany and out of Europe and into certain other neutral countries. When I originally started out with this set of programs, I was wanting to do with this fairly early on because it kind of would have set up some of the other stuff that would have maybe made things more plain, but it just for some reason didn't work out that way. But we can start on it now.
All right. Does this have to do also with the funding of the Reich in preparation for World War II? From what you made it sound like, this also has a lot to do with what happened after the war.
This is really more what happened after the war and the development of what I'm calling the Fourth Reich, the Underground Reich. And
are we to believe then that as the Third Reich was ending and, Ding Dong, the witch is supposedly dead, even before the true war's end, the seeds for the Fourth Reich were already dispersed, and a lot of them just kind of were blown by the wind to the Western Hemisphere, right?
That's correct.
All right.
Actually, I believe it was 1943-44, right after Stalingrad, and it became obvious to a lot of the intelligentsia within the Third Reich that the war that they were currently fighting was probably not going to end in their favor, and as a result, they started planning for the Fourth Reich. They were not going to give up. They had no intention of giving up. They were dedicated to their cause and did everything they could to keep it going for a future time, and that's what we'll be talking about today. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about is just a tribute to a guy that I kind of liked, Andy Rooney, who was a CBS news correspondent, journalist, and kind of one of the great curmudgeons of all time. And now that I'm becoming a curmudgeon, I really appreciate curmudgeonliness. When it's done well.
You know what? I was just thinking we can make a yearly award for that.
We could.
Since I'm in the club too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like curmudgeon. Guys that they're kind of surly old guys, and they're kind of PO'd at the world in general.
Well, I remember. I don't like staplers. They seem kind of foolish to me. Stuff like that.
Yeah, it's and younger people look at you, God, what an old grouch.
And I hate to tell you how short a time ago it seemed when he first got his kind of gig on TV. Yeah. And he did a really interesting original piece, if I can remember, going around like offices in Washington or whatever. So we didn't know how to take him. It looked like he was kind of, I don't even want to do this, but it was kind of like a for real Michael Moore back when. Mm-hmm. And just having the audacity, and of course, that was the beginning of it, and here we are, it's some 40 years later, so.
I'll tell you one thing about Andy Rooney. I found out that just recently, actually, I read the book, Paul Manning's book, Martin Bormann, Nazi in Exile, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about tonight. It's probably the greatest work I've ever seen on the flight capital program. Paul Manning, during World War II, was one of Edward R. Murrow's correspondents in England. He was stationed in London, and I'll just read from the book. Early in 1943, a small group of American war correspondents volunteered to be trained for flying with the B-17s in their missions over Germany. This was intended by the U.S. 8th Air Force to communicate to Americans back in the United States the eyewitness story of their air battles and the bravery of their sons. I was one of these trainees representing CBS News. There was also Gladwin Hill of Associated Press and later the New York Times, Robert Post of the New York Times, Homer Biggert of the New York Herald Tribune, William Wade of International News Service, Sergeant Scott Denton of Yank, and Sergeant Andy Rooney of Stars and Stripes.
Mm-hmm.
We were sent to gunnery school in England, where we learned to identify all German fighter planes and to strip down and reassemble within 40 seconds the Browning machine guns used in the B-17's Liberators. This was essential knowledge, for seconds saved in fixing the stoppage in a malfunctioning machine gun could be the difference between life and death. We were not flying as excess baggage, but as gunners first and war correspondents second. Over Wilhelmshaven on our first mission, I shot down a Messerschmitt fighter that had come right at us from the front, where I was acting nose gunner. The reason I brought this up as a tribute to Andy Rooney is that it kind of struck a chord with me that he had the kind of guts that he did, and he was committed, to what he believed in as a soldier, as an American soldier. I mean, he didn't have to do that, but
Mm-hmm.
none of these other guys did either. They weren't even in the military, most of them. And I just thought that was a really cool thing that he did, and I always kind of liked the guy, but I had more respect for him after I read that.
Not a real big deal, but a name that never made it, I don't think, out of the war was Ernie Pyle.
Oh, yeah.
Remember Ernie? Yeah.
Yeah. He was a great guy. Great guy.
So, I was just wondering, too, I wanted to say something to you with an eye to the future, and I'm not going to belabor this, but
Sure.
You talked about a little with Colvin, and I think I might want to revisit that as to some sources that I've been made aware of lately. Not that they're, private or anything like that, about all that perhaps Germany did have and never unleashed.
Right.
And then, of course, the question is, well, why didn't you? And then, you know how I feel, and that is that thing was scripted. They could have done a lot more if they wanted to, and Hitler wasn't that foolish. I mean, it was deliberate. But anyway, all that stuff that never got unleashed, that probably is with us to this very day.
Oh, yeah, it all came over here. A large portion of it came to the United States, some of it to England, and some of it to Canada. The research that they were doing on advanced weaponry and advanced aircraft. I know there have been quite a few good books written on it. I haven't read very many of them, but I know there's a lot of material available. Maybe we could prepare a program and do a little more thorough job. That was a great interview, I guess you could say, with Andy. The thing that I was impressed with was that not impressed with, but kind of happy to see, was that Andy agreed with me on pretty much everything, and I didn't expect it because I know Andy's not a born again Christian. Not that really matters, but as far as his opinions, but. That was really a good interview. I enjoyed it. He's a really nice guy.
There's a gentleman out there by the name of Dietrich who's been on Coast to Coast lately and such, and what happened was Big Jim in Illinois happened to hear him while he was off to work. And I think probably Coast to Coast is one of the favorites of truckers for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. And he emailed me as quickly as he could and said, "You got not only do you have to listen to this, but you got to get a hold of Colvin and let him hear it." He said, because this guy is saying a lot of stuff that Andy did. There was more going on, obviously, than we realized. And that also leads to a discussion also that we're going to have on this Saturday with Jacob Appelman, who's coming on from Go Find the Others. And that has to do with, free energy and the things that we know that are out there that we probably aren't going to be allowed to have for obvious reasons. And it all comes out of Germany. And you gotta hand it to the people. I don't know, whether you confine it to a country or to a certain racial thing. I don't know, but man, they were ahead of the curve, weren't they?
Oh yeah. In the 1920s and 30s, if you wanted to get an advanced degree in physics or any of the sciences, the natural sciences, Germany was the place you would want to go if you could get into one of the universities there, because they were way ahead of the rest of the world in physics. I mean, the United States and England and certain other countries, were fairly advanced, but not anywhere near the way they were. And that was just a fact. I mean, the Germans have a talent. I'm obviously generalizing, but there's something about the German culture and the German,
yes,
character, whatever, that makes them good in the sciences, and their universities really showed that.
And you had the Frankfurt School, and of course, what should not be forgotten is what Charlotte Isabet was talking about with those Americans in the education field who went over to the Wundt experimental school and came back with certain education theories and such, and I believe that most of them came back to the University of Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
And also took over what would soon become, in that sense, it was not titular, but it was in effect, it was happening, but a certain approach to educating students worldwide, countrywide in the public school system, and Dewey was a part of that, and Bloom was a part of that, Benjamin Bloom, and there again, here's another whole phalanx of in a certain field that had a great impact, on the West, further on the West, over here in the United States. So again, it comes out of there, and I don't know how to explain it, and nobody's asking me to, but my goodness, we forget about a lot of the things that came out of there that have really found themselves ingrained in our society.
One thing I thought was very ironic was that the man who put the United States on the track to build the atomic bomb in the Second World War was Albert Einstein, a German Jew who had been run out of Nazi Germany. That always struck me as ironic. It's kind of like chickens coming home to roost for them.
Can you imagine that, having not only Einstein, but then von Braun also,
Yeah.
Where do you grow these guys,
Yeah. It's just there's a certain individual, I guess, just born with that talent, and it's something that's just there. It's not something that most people, can work their way into, I guess.
Yeah, to have that percentage of great minds coming from a particular country, it's amazing. So, all right, going on with the program that you had decided to do today, we're going to see that the kind of like the dispersal of the Third Reich, but also into a reconstruction for a Fourth Reich. Yeah.
I was going to read a brief synopsis, and then I was going to go into a little more detail. I have an article by a guy named Emanuel Winston who wrote The Fourth Reich and the Grand Jihad. We're not really going to talk about radical Islam, but he does have a good synopsis of what happened after World War II. He said, "We Americans thought that when we defeated Germany, we had ended the quest for the Third Reich, with which Hitler's Nazis planned to dominate the world for 1,000 years. It appears that we were mistaken. Before Germany's Nazis were defeated, their true organizers were already moving the loot of World War II to safe vaults in other nations. Both the SS killers and the industrialists continued their long-range planning far into the future. The monsters of Hitler's planned Third Reich are now emerging through those I shall call their sons, grandchildren, and today's industrial clones. Although the Third Reich existed for only a relatively short time before it was seemingly stopped by the Americans and the Allies in 1945, its philosophy of world domination never died. Most of the top Nazi criminals slipped away through the rat line with the help of the Catholic Church, the Red Cross, and American diplomats like the Dulles brothers, John and Alan, who erased the history of Germany's industrialists who used the Jews as slave labor. For some, the dream of a new world order did not die with Hitler's suicide in his Berlin bunker. It was merely put into deep storage for a long time with the money they had banked in various countries until they could create a Fourth Reich with a different breed of Nazi. Those funds, along with new money, had been tapped by corrupt financial geniuses as a powerful force in competing for who will succeed in controlling their planet's economy in the future. It appears that old German money pillaged from the Jews in all of Europe, added to new money, was now to be invested in the next New World Order scheme. Let's start to look for the New World Orderists who had family connection to Hitler's regimes or were the amoral industrialists then and now. Start by tracking through the family tree where grandfathers of the generation supported Hitler's dream of a New World Order to be dominated by those whom they regarded as superior people. They would include the industrialists and heirs who collaborated on both sides with each other during World War II. To clarify, German industrialists, along with American and European corporate executives, collaborated with each other during World War II, both for profit and mutual protection. Each claimed to be loyal to their country of origin, but in fact was only loyal to their own profit centers and to themselves. That kind of pretty much sums it up in what I'm going to talk about, and of course not a great deal of detail there. Next, I'm going to a quote from a book by a man named Ladislav Farago. It's called Aftermath, Martin Bormann and the Fourth Reich. The documents I had before me contained first-hand evidence that the Reichsleiter had survived the war and succeeded in escaping to Argentina. It was attested by the Argentine authorities themselves in highly classified intelligence reports and position papers drawn up for their own secret and official use. When he's talking about the Reichsleiter, he's talking about Bormann. And next, I'm going to read from a book by Henry Stevens. It's called The Last Battalion, a German Arctic, Antarctic, and Andean Bases. That's another topic that we ought to talk about in a little more depth, is if we can get good information on it, is the Nazi bases in the Arctic and the Antarctic, or, did they exist, and what was the nature of that? That would be a good one, I think.
And without going into the purview, if you will, of some of the wackier stuff on C2C, as you know, I think just from the years and the stuff that we've encountered, I mean, even when it comes down to the book inside a book in Orwell's 1984, Antarctica comes up all the time, and as Paul Sandu and I used to talk about, I mean, you'll see a little blurb here and there about Antarctica, but for the most part, my goodness, with all the scientists crawling around down there, we don't know anything.
Well, the thing that was really strange to me was that the United States sent out Admiral Byrd with a group of warships down to the Antarctic, I believe in 46, 47, 48, right after World War II. And supposedly it was a, quote, scientific expedition. Well, if you're on a scientific expedition, why do you need destroyers? These were warships. And they apparently went down, something happened, and they came back, after a certain amount of time. And it was kept up shush, and I think it's still a classified, operation. I don't think you can get documentation on it.
No.
Other than a few, word-of-mouth things that people said. And if I remember correctly, I read that Admiral Byrd kind of hinted at it, that they had fought an action against the Nazis there, but they were unsuccessful and they had to retreat. And, who knows? I just thought that was really fascinating.
Oh, it is fascinating, and it's a really unfortunate, well, at least we think it is, that there isn't more reasonable information about it that we can consume. I mean, you have a little here and a little there, and you can only extrapolate, but to me, it wouldn't surprise me if the keys to a lot of things, including UFOs, are connected with Antarctica.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, you can't burrow under the Arctic. It isn't a continent; it's just a mass of ice. But Antarctica is, and I mean, so what's going on down below? And you know the stories also about inner world there and stuff. But I've never found anything really satisfactory to back it up. And I wanted to find it badly. I had somebody on once, but you can't. How far can you go?
Yeah.
But it pops up all the time. And we even laughed once because Paul had sent me an article, a news article, and this was like probably 2005 or something like that, where the a flank of the New York Air Guard went down to Antarctica and had picked something up or whatever. I forget what it was, but he was asking me, he's like, why the New York Air Guard? What are they doing down there? So, yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's probably a food fight going on to find out what's going on there.
Well, there was some speculation I've seen some authors. And, the documentation's sketchy. But I've seen some authors say that it was a military base and also an experimental colony that they had down there that they built up even before World War II, that they were working on building a colony down there. And they were trying to experiment with, perfecting a Nordic Aryan race. In other words, kind of a breeding farm type situation. And, like a genetic laboratory type thing. And that wouldn't surprise me a bit with them, because that was a very important part of their whole philosophy. But, like I say, the documentation is sketchy. I mean, we can write science fiction novels about it, and that's about it, I guess.
Yeah, it's just amazing that in this, obviously, the 21st century, when man has it together about so many things, still in all, we don't hear a lot about Antarctica. And that has got to be deliberate.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay, I'm going on, but this is from, like I say, Henry Stevens' book. As the war turned irrevocably against the Third Reich, Top Nazi leaders began to plan for the future, among them the Reichsleiter Martin Bormann, Hitler's secretary and virtual shadow, and financial administrator of the parties, as well as Hitler's own personal and considerable fortune. While much of the story is known to the general public in broad outline, few appreciate the degree of organization, planning, and success it had, and unfortunately they may be continuing to have. Even fewer appreciate its significance for what began in the secret societies of post-World War I Germany as the most explosive political movement in modern history. It would end by once again going underground and operating behind a variety of false fronts that included corporations, black projects, secret societies, and criminal and paramilitary syndicates. It would thus exercise a considerable, though hidden, moral and cultural influence on the world that emerged after World War II. With the failure of the final large German offensive in Soviet Russia at Kursk in 1943, the Nazi leadership had but two courses of action. One was to continue the war and hope for the realization of their secret weapons projects in time to provide a military resuscitation. I might add that one of their secret weapon projects was the, quote, flying saucers. And two, begin the process of moving capital, technology, and personnel to ensure the survival of the party by other means. The Nazi leadership chose both courses of action. At first, the movement of resources abroad, monetary, technological, and human, proceeded haphazardly. Money and loot from a plundered Europe made its way into secret Swiss bank accounts, or in the case of hard assets, precious minerals, bullion, art, diamonds, and other gemstones, and so on, made its way overland through France into neutral but decidedly pro-Axis nationalist Spain. But it soon became apparent that haphazard efforts would not ensure the survival of the party, nor the furtherance of its ideals, nor the spread of its power in the post-war world, nor the continuance of its research projects would have to be continued if ever hoped to regain power and influence. Organization and long-range planning in depth and breadth had to occur if Nazism was to survive covertly. To this end, Martin Bormann orchestrated a top-secret meeting on August 10, 1944, at the Hotel Rutzhaus in Strasbourg in occupied France. Representatives of all the major German industrial and armaments firms were present, including the huge firms of Krupp, Thyssen, and, of course, I.G. Farben. Also present were Bormann himself, Hjalmar Schacht, president of the Reichsbank, and his son-in-law, the famous SS commando, drumroll please, Colonel Otto Skorzeny, leader of the daring air mission to rescue Benito Mussolini in 1943. At this meeting, provisions were made not only to move great sums of money outside Germany, but also to camouflage foreign assets on paper for the resurrection of a financial industrial empire of sorts. Once the Reich collapsed, this empire was to be controlled by the SS. As a result of this plan, the well-known SS-run rat lines were formed to assist fleeing SS and other Nazis to provide for their financial security, relocation, and false identities. The most famous of these, of course, was the Odessa Group, or the Organization der SS Angehörigen, or Organization of Former SS Members. Another famous organization was the Spinne, or the Spider. In any case, under the Reichsleiter's powerful protection, the SS, in concert with the Kriegsmarine, began to smuggle enormous quantities of gold, precious gems, art, and both genuine and counterfeit cash out of Germany. To a lesser extent, machine tools, steel, technicians, and other personnel began to be quietly siphoned off German industry and smuggled out of Europe. The financial treasure trove was then laundered by the SS via a variety of methods. For example, through Evita Perón's Swiss bank accounts. Evita Perón was the wife of Juan Perón, the dictator of Argentina, who was a fascist. Through dummy corporations, through the South American drug trade, and so on. During this immediate post-war period, most of this fortune was controlled by Otto Skorzeny. The German industrialists who had been set up abroad with SS money dating back to the deal at the Rothhaus in Strasbourg in 1944 were asked by Skorzeny to pay back their loans. Both Thyssen and Krupp did so, as presumably did others. To give the reader an idea of the sums collected by Skorzeny, Eva Perón alone had an estimated $800 million in bank accounts. That's in 1945 money. You can imagine how much that is now. And 4,600 carats of diamonds and other precious stones, 90 kilograms of platinum, and 2,500 kilograms of gold. With these monies, the SS purchased huge tracts of land in South America and elsewhere, and large corporations were established in which research, which had begun in Germany, could be carried through. These secured areas often saw the establishment of whole towns, airfields, highways, and all the amenities of civilized German life. Local security was, of course, provided by the SS or contract labor from the host country. The most famous of these colonies, perhaps, is the Colonia Dignidad, a colony notorious for the disappearance of two inquisitive reporters and implicated in the U.S. overthrow of the Chilean Marxist government of Salvador Allende in the early 1970s and the training of Chilean dictator Pinochet's DINA interrogators. Peter Levenda talked quite a bit about that in Unholy Alliance. And, of course, these secure areas in the Andes and other remote South American locations are also reputed to be the sites of secret Nazi laboratories continuing the research on flying saucers and other wartime Nazi black projects. Whatever one may think of the truthfulness of the last allegation, it is true and generally well known that such colonies of Nazis did and still do exist in South America, with connections to the South American underworld and governments that one can only imagine. But there is good reason not to dismiss even the continued research allegation too quickly, for it conforms to a well-known pattern of secret post-war West German corporate and military research on the continent on the other side of the ocean in Africa. So that's kind of another summary with a little more detail as to how it was done. I guess next, take a brief water break here. We'll go into Paul Manning's book, Martin Bormann, Nazi in Exile. That book was published in 1981 by Lyle Stewart. I know that you talked about Lyle Stewart, one of your other guests. And I think poor old Lyle Stewart kind of lived to regret the decision to publish it. He apparently was a real American who believed in the idea of the freedom of the press. But to his sorrow, the day after the book was published, two thugs jumped him in New York City and broke both of his legs. So he kind of, suffered for his valor there.
It's interesting because he was behind the publishing of some of Lundberg's books. I don't know how many of them. And the one that was foremost in our minds was what John Bonanno had found with the rich and the super rich. And I took a look to see whether or not we could legally put up his PDF. And there's still a copyright on it, apparently, although I don't believe Lyle Stewart or his family hold it still. At any rate, it was through that I took a look around for him and realized that he lived in the next town over from me when I was in Jersey. And he was willing, in a sense, like, I don't know, what do you want to call it, maybe a bit of a more cultivated Larry Flint. But
Larry Flint without all the photographs, huh?
Well, it's
all the girly stuff.
Yeah, but you raise a good point, because the one thing that I have still up on the old website, which you can hit through Think or Be Eaten, was a Penthouse article in May of '76, which is one of these things that started me off on what's really going on. That wasn't enough at that time, but it's one of those things you don't forget. You kind of shelve it for future, investigation, and which led me to where I am now. But you see, that article, which is interestingly titled Unholy Alliance, not anything to do with Levenda, and this thing predates easily Levenda's work, but it's about somebody who had just gotten his hands on recently declassified documents that showed that American companies like GM and DuPont and Ford helped bring, materiel, at least mechanized in the area of vehicles, to the Germans. Mm-hmm. And people don't understand that, and I didn't understand. I was 25 when I read the thing, and here again, it's in Penthouse. So right away it's like, well, what do you expect if it's in Penthouse? But that's not the point. The point is, Time wouldn't do it, Newsweek wouldn't do it, and so these magazines have a way of putting this stuff in. Yeah. That's another thing like that is like National Enquirer. It's got 99% bizarre stuff, but every so often something will pop up because the author can't get it out any other way.
Well, another girly mag, probably the biggest one of all, Playboy, they were the only people who would touch an interview with Jim Garrison. And there's an excellent series of interviews in the old Playboys of '67, I believe, with Jim Garrison talking about his investigation.
Yeah.
And nobody else would touch it. Also, Fletcher Prouty couldn't get his story about, what he knew about the CIA and the Kennedy assassination. He couldn't get anybody to interview him except I can't remember. I think it's called Gallery. It was another girly mag,
I think it was Gallery. I think you're right.
Yeah. And they interviewed Prouty, and of course Prouty caught a lot of crap for that later on. Why would you be in such a sleazy publication? And he goes, well, because nobody else would interview me.
Right. So you can find some real decent chestnuts throughout the last few decades that came, via what we would call girly magazines, and that was one of them. In fact, folks, if you're not aware of this, and I'm not going to think about the path and how you can get to it, because I still hold Vyzygoth.com, and that's where those PDFs are. But if you do a Google search or whatever search you want to use, I don't like Google, but anyway, if you do Unholy Alliance plus Vyzygoth.com or something like that, you can go read that article. And I mean, again, when that hit me in '76, I'm like, this flies in the face of everything I ever thought.
Yeah, I've read that article. I don't remember. I believe it was on your website. And, a lot of what is in there is echoed by other books that have come out, long since. The Higham, a British author, I forget the title of his book. He did a book about, how the corporations were all, involved in it together. And my dad actually told me one time, I guess I was a high school kid, sometimes he would just drop a bomb on me, just to see how I'd react. He said, do you know that Standard Oil used to trade with the Nazis as well as the United States? And, pardon me, golly. But, it was like, oh, come on, Dad. He goes, no, seriously. He said, they sold crude oil to both sides. They sold gasoline to both sides. He said that's just something that happened during the Second World War. He said they don't really care about countries and about causes. So the only thing they care about is money. And, here I was a kid about 16, 17 years old, and it kind of rocked me back, a little bit. But it was the truth. I found out later he didn't tell me that just to, freak me out, but, kind of clue me in as to, Okay, this is from Martin Bormann, Nazi in Exile, and Bormann, the Bormann organization and how Bormann did what he did to set up the Fourth Reich was laid out in this book. And Manning writes, the movement of German assets into Switzerland had also gone well, Bormann noted from his reports. Flight capital investments had been accomplished principally through the establishment of subsidiaries of powerful German firms. Over half of the total German capital in Switzerland was used in setting up holding companies, representing IG Farben, Merck, Siemens, Osram, Henkel, and others. A holding company may not trade in any form. It may only hold stock in other companies. But through this device, the existing German firms and the 750 new corporations established under the Bormann program gave themselves absolute control over a post-war economic network of viable, prosperous companies that stretched from the Ruhr to the neutrals of Europe and into the countries of South America. A control that continues today and is easily maintained through the bearer bonds or shares issued by these corporations to cloak real ownership. Bearer shares require no registration of identity, for such shares are exactly what they mean. The bearer of the majority shares controls the company without needing a vestige of proof as to how he acquired them. Thus, the Germans, who participated as a silent force in Bormann's post-war commercial campaign, which is sometimes referred to by aging Nazis as the Operation's Eagle Flight, ensured their command over the industrial and financial institutions that were to move the new Federal Republic of Germany back into the forefront of world economic leadership. Powerful friends of the Bormann organization in all Western countries, including those sprinkled in control points throughout the administration in Washington and in the financial and brokerage businesses of Wall Street, the City of London, and the Paris establishment, did not wish a coordinated drive to get at these external German assets. They had understandable reasons. If you overlook morality, the financial benefits for corporate cooperation collaboration had become an old hat term with the war winding down, were very enticing, depending on one's importance and ability to be of service to the organization and the 750 corporations they were secretly manipulating, to say nothing of the known multinationals such as IG Farben, Thyssen AG, and Siemens, and as a second reason, the philosophy of free enterprise and preservation of private property. What became apparent to Manning, and these are my words in an article I wrote, but what became apparent to Manning was the cooperation of the major corporate and political elements in the United States and other major Western nations in allowing the virtual state of the Fourth Reich to come into being and to prosper. IG Farben, the German industrial giant, had played a key role in this development, as Hermann Schmitz explained at Nuremberg. And this is from his testimony. In testimony later, this is Manning's book again, in testimony later given to Nuremberg investigators, Schmitz praised Bormann for the way he had directed the distribution of German assets throughout the world. His own Farben organization had, of course, contributed to the success of the operation. Every regional representative working for Hermann Schmitz was an exceptional businessman, or he would not have been with IG. All had contributed sound advice in areas of competence. The regions of the world where they represented Farben while keeping an eye on the subsidiaries of the parent concern and the 700 hidden corporations they controlled. They provided assistance and continuing guidance and established the 750 new companies created on order of Bormann, who wanted more than hidden assets. Bormann wanted the money and patents and technicians put to work to create even greater assets that would bolster Germany in the post-war years. In their meeting in the Chancellery, both men checked over the figures of sums dispersed, and they were accurate to the penny. The Reichsleiter asked Schmitz his view of the future. Schmitz replied, "The occupation armies will be understanding in the West, but certainly not in the East. I've instructed all Farben administrators and technicians to come to the West, where they can be of use in resuming our operations once the disturbances of 1945 come to a halt." Schmitz added that while general bomb damage to the IG plants was about 25% of capacity, some were untouched. He mentioned speaking with Field Marshal Model, who was commanding the defenses of the Ruhr. Model had planned to turn our Bayer Leverkusen pharmaceutical factory into an artillery base, but he agreed to make it all an open, undefended factory. Hopefully we will get it back untouched. What about your board of directors and the essential executives? If they are held by the occupation authorities, can IG continue? Bormann asked. We can continue. We have an operational plan for such a contingency, which everyone understands. However, I don't believe our board members will be detained too long, nor will I. But we must go through a procedure of investigation before release. So I've been told by our NW7 people, who have excellent contacts in Washington. Schmitz, ever the clever little CEO, had even prepared a method to deflect the blame away from IG Farben for their production of his Icon B, which was a poison gas used in a camp. Schmitz also told Bormann of his visit to Switzerland early in the month. Germany will have a poor image problem this time, much worse than after the First World War. It can all be placed on the doorstep of Goering, Himmler, and Heydrich. Goering and Himmler thought up the final solution for the Jews, and Heydrich made it a fact. Bormann agreed, asking, "How does that affect IG?" Well, he said, "We produced the poison gas on Himmler's orders," Schmitz claimed. "So that doesn't make us culpable. We were only following his orders as good people would." Okay. Next, I would like to talk, or I would like to read from an article written by Alex Constantine, one of my favorite anti-Nazis, and his the birth of the Fourth Reich. And he writes, in September 1944, Sims Carter, Assistant Chief of the Economic Warfare Section of the Justice Department, testified before the Kilgore Committee that despite military defeat, the industrial cartels of Germany had renewed activity from bases in Argentina. All the machinery, he said, is ready for safeguarding German supremacy in the steadily expanding South American market. Much of that market had been quietly incorporated by IG Farben and other financial backers of Hitler well before the war began. In the 1930s, as German factories tooled up for the onslaught, German entrepreneurs quietly built factories, railroads, and chemical and steel plants throughout South America. The munitions industry was all but monopolized by Farben and Krupp, providing business fronts for the Nazi fifth column. The insinuation of Nazism into Caribbean politics was directed by Albert Becker and Arnold Marjorie, officers of Farben La Química Bayer in Caracas. Down in Argentina, Axel Wintergren, a Swedish millionaire and crony of Hermann Goering, Hitler's propaganda minister, actually Hitler's second in command, established subsidiaries and gracefully snatched up the key industrial plants. Edward Stettinius, U.S. Secretary of State, speaking at an Inter-American conference in 1945, warned that the Nazis would attempt to escape the consequences of their crimes. We must constantly be on the alert for the flight into this hemisphere of Nazi funds and Nazi underground leaders who will seek to find a refuge here for an ultimate comeback. Among those to slip through the Allied dragnet in occupied Germany, scramble across the red line set up by American intelligence and the secret orders of the Vatican, and settle in South America were Klaus Barbie in Bolivia, Heinrich Müller in Argentina, Joseph Mengele in Paraguay, Walter Rauth in Chile, and Frederick Schwind in Peru. Financial and political ties in South America, the collusion of American and Latin officials, and military intelligence subverted any attempt to block the resurgence. The heart of the Nazi Party remained nearly intact. In a book on Nazi industry and politics, German immigrant Karl Otten described the underground leadership's ability to perpetuate itself and to render itself immortal through its innermost core, the brains of a bellicose nation's brains, in anonymity, in unknown places, secluded from the world, controlling politics no less than operations in the field. And this is Constantine again. The Nazis were cremated by their world oligarchy, created by the world oligarchy.
I was going to say.
We can only hope they were cremated.
Yeah.
Sorry. The Nazis were created by the world oligarchy for war, turned out in Gnostic vestments. German terrorist groups actually referred to themselves as the Death's Head, and were known to commit ritualistic murder. The roots of the Nazi Party were buried in hidden places, said Hitler's friend Hermann Rausting. The Nazis were covert operators, not to be confused with the German military. One fought an underground war, the other waged a blitz. Hitler's bloodless covert warriors did not wither into dust after the military was defeated. Fascism survived and flourished. In August 1945, the U.S. argued for and succeeded in disbanding the UN War Crimes Commission in favor of the Nuremberg Tribunal. The architect of Nuremberg was Henry Stimson, a Yale bonesman.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Yep.
Former Secretary of State under Herbert Hoover. Stimson, a vocal atom bomb proponent, suggested it be used against Japan, and every wheel and cog in government went into motion to accommodate him. At Nuremberg, he fell back on a strategy that would become the staple of the congressional hearings, narrowing the scope of the investigation. With the judgment at Nuremberg, wrote Stimson for Foreign Relations in 1947, we at least reached to the core of international strife. And Constantine says, yes, articulate, smooth, disingenuous words. Stimson's tribunal reached to the core of the strife, but the penalty for participation in genocide was hardly severe. The directors of IG Farben, the economic and industrial sponsors of the Nazi Party, and Krupp, the principal supplier of munitions, were tried for making war in violation of the Briand-Kellogg Treaty and were led through a revolving door. It couldn't be proven beyond a doubt their intent was aggressive, as stipulated by the treaty. Upon their release, the directors of Krupp and Farben immediately went on to exchange Nazi gold for Swiss notes on the sly. They hid reserves away for the next phase of the war. All IG Farben facilities were left standing by American bombers on strict order from Washington. To smooth the path to corporate growth, General Patton stepped in and, in violation of the post-date agreement, which specifically called for the dismantling of Farben, reorganized the company and promoted many of its former mid-level executives. For every Nazi convicted at Nuremberg, 4 were released. Stimson's Catch-22 demanded that it be proven the culprits had shaped war policy. With judgment at Nuremberg constricted by such reasoning, it is hardly surprising that the first trial ended with the conviction of a dozen Nazis from a pool of 22. For the next trial, the definitions of intent and authority were constricted even further, and 49 of the 52 leading German officers and industrialists were set free. Dr. Robert Kempner, who might be described as an early conspiracy theorist, wrote that with few exceptions, quote, the other SS leaders convicted at Nuremberg on charges of murder have been prematurely pardoned and freed as a result of strong pressure by certain, partly still anonymous, sponsors. In June 1949, jurisdiction over the war criminals was handed to High Commissioner John McCloy, a hardcore, quote, anti-Nazi. That's a joke. His attitude underwent a drastic change in closed sessions, however. McCloy's secret clemency board reduced the sentences of all but the most intractable SS. Nearly a third were released for good behavior at the behest of the German General Staff. Others were granted amnesty by the thousands. A year later, Jim Martin, a Defense Department investigator, traveled to Germany to track down Gerhard Westrick, the CEO of ITT in Germany, and already a mover in the formation of the Fourth Reich. Westrick had fled Berlin bombing and took refuge in a castle to the south. By post, he appealed for help from his army cronies who smuggled him to Paris to apprise Colonel Alex Sanders of the condition of ITT's German holdings. Westrick received a token prison sentence and was released. Hermann Abs, one of Hitler's principal financial backers, was employed as a consultant in the British zone for the Dutch Bank. I like it. He's a financial backer of Hitler, and he just gets employed by the British because he's a good banker.
Well, he's got a lot of experience.
Yeah. And he was never a Nazi. He never agreed with any of it. Anyway, the emerging order was merely a reorganization of the old. Anyone who caught on was ignored, or if they went public, they were tarred by government officials as communists, including Dexter White and Lachlan Curry of the Treasury Department. White and Curry were investigating financial dealings with Germany throughout the course of the war by Standard Oil, Chase, and National City banks, the Morgan family, ITT, Ford, and GM, among others. That pretty well gets the majority of the biggest corporations in America. The careers of both investigators were wiped out by the McCarthy hearings, and they were effectively silenced. Telford Taylor, chief counsel at Nuremberg, saw the proceedings for what they were. He was beside himself that the most powerful Nazis were acquitted on technicalities. Murder, maiming, enslavement, ravage, and plunder are a familiar litany, he wrote in 1970. What was unique about the Nazi conquest, especially in Eastern Europe, he said, was the enormous scope of the atrocities and the systematic planning and meticulous execution of these hideous enterprises. I think I can stop there for a little bit in case you had any questions or comments.
You know, when I listened to this, and I was thinking of this just as you finished the last couple of paragraphs, and I shake my head because people listening to this, most of them would pretty much understand that, quote, that was the way it was then.
Uh-huh.
But the thing is, it never changes.
No.
And as a result, as I hear that, I'm thinking about what's going on right now. How, you know, some people who have said, the war will bankrupt the United States. I mean, I remember Chapman coming on back in 04, 05 and predicting that the war would have to end. And I'm saying, well, why? I said, because we can't afford it. He goes, yeah. And I keep thinking in my mind, you know, to take a line from an old commercial, not to be too crass, but you know, I was thinking, well, there's always room for Jell-O. You know, there's always money for war. What do you need? I mean, really, who's going to call in the chips? Do whatever you want to do. And you take a look at us for the last century, and all we've been doing is getting into fights. I mean, that's not normal. You know, if we were a child, like we'd be in juvie or something. You know.
Yeah.
And so when I hear all this stuff going on, and I think by this time people would understand, even those who listen to the mainstream, that this stuff went on. They think that it ended then. They don't understand that's the way it's always been, and it's happening again. And that really, I mean, let's face it. It just points out as well that we live on a corporate plantation, and you know this is what we do to keep the thing going. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's where you know you thought I might be going, but I just keep shaking my head because it's the same old, and here we are. You know.
Well, the thing that the guy brought out in the first article that I read was that a lot of Americans just assumed the Nazis went down and that was the end of it. But they never did. They had no intention of ever doing that.
Well, do you know how people would freak if they realized that at least some of that movie what was it, The Boys in Brazil?
Uh-huh.
I mean, it was true. I mean,
That's based on truth. I mean,
yeah.
It's fictional, but it's based on truth.
Yeah, when it first came out, I was like, yeah, sure. You know, didn't pay much attention to it.
Yeah.
And I must have watched it like 2-3 years ago, knowing what I know. And I'm like, yeah, it is. You know, it's a little stretch here and there, but I mean, that's it. It's true. I mean, the fact that South America was so loaded with them, and that the two most southern countries in South America, Chile and Peru, Argentina, you know, were so infested with them. I mean, even when before I even realized what was going on, one of the things I always remarked about when I saw the military from down there, it's like they look like Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
where they got their training.
Well, and I shouldn't say that this is that big a deal, but obviously the German helmet was probably a little smarter than the U.S. Helmet.
Well, not only that, but the goose stepping and just the general bearing that they have is very similar to Nazi Germans. And, you know, it's unmistakable. I mean, it's made I probably should have read some more of Levenda's stuff about that. He talked quite a bit about the influence of the Nazis in Latin America, but
well, I had him on.
It's real. I mean, they're there. Those guys, and some of the old Nazis, they're in their late 80s and 90s now, but they're still down there. You know, still causing trouble and still, you know, still influential.
Well, Levenda came on.
Sons and their grandsons are definitely influential.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. I was going to say that
Go ahead.
Levenda came on years ago to speak to Colonia Dignidad, and then not long after that, and while it was still fresh in my mind, more or less, they finally went down there and busted it.
Yeah.
You know, okay, great. So you pull that down. Yeah, where did everybody else go? I mean, it's still there. So, it's.
Well, it got so much publicity, somebody had to do something about it. And then when the regime change came, and they threw, I guess it was Pinochet out, and they came in with a little more moderate regime, which was, you know, Pinochet was just a fascist dictator. He was a Nazi. But when they came in with a new regime, you know, they went ahead and investigated all these claims and found them to be true. And Levenda is one lucky sucker not to be a dead man right now. You know, he just happened to luck out that they didn't just pull him out of the car and take his butt in there and torture him and kill him. But you know, I'm glad they didn't. But you know, he didn't realize what he was walking into. He was very young and very naive. You know, and you don't fool with these people. I mean, they're extremely dangerous. They'll kill you. You know, just as sure as look at you. You know, no problem.
And we've had on Kathleen Sullivan, who wrote the book Unshackled, and Maury, who wrote Reflections in the Night. And both of them have somewhat similar stories, though being raised in different parts of the country. But both of them were raised by parents who allowed them to be used, you know, as a chip, more or less, with the Nazis that came across here.
And you know, that's another element about the Nazis. Another one of the most evil. I mean, just incredible evil is the abuse and murder of children, you know, that is associated with them. And you know, like they were talking about the Thule Society and the I forget the inner core of the Thules. They had like 3 different levels, but at the one level, one of the societies, that was one of their deals, was sacrificing children. You know, sexual abuse and sacrifice of children to gain spiritual power, and we know where that spiritual power comes from.
But doesn't that make sense? In fact, in back of the Sandusky Penn State thing, I'm going to have hopefully 2, but one person in particular coming on to talk about this, because one of the things that I want, but I mean, and I don't know if the person, you know, I don't know if they're Christian or whatever, they profess any particular faith. I had just written in a like a cover email to request if she would come on the show. I said, you know, and I mean, I'll say this straight. I said, look, I'm a Bible believer with a brain. Okay, so understand where I'm coming from, but I don't find it neither coincidental or I guess just one of those epochs, more or less, that in supposedly a civilized world, in a civilized country, that we see more and more victimization of children. And I mean, she doesn't go into the kind of thing that Ellen Lachter does, who's been on the show quite a few times, with the ritual abuse.
You know, when I heard those programs, I've heard both of the one with Maury. and Ellen Lecter a little later. The one with Maury, it knocked me for a loop.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt depressed for a couple of days after hearing that. It was so sad, so horrible, and I began to realize, at first I wasn't sure whether to believe it or not. It shocked me so much. And then I realized that I had read similar things about the Franklin cover-up here in this country, and heard similar things, and I began to realize there are organized rings of these people who kidnap, sexually abuse, and murder children. Crazy as that may sound to somebody who's never heard about it before, it really is true, and it has connections to the Nazis. It has connections to Satanism, and the Nazis are definitely satanic.
Evil
and are satanic.
Evil never gets more sophisticated.
No.
People can read about what took place in Jeremiah and understand it with that kind of head of like, well, they were barbarians back then. Well, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. If anything,
just plain evil.
Yeah.
They were doing what they did for power.
But isn't it? And this is where I was going with the woman. I said it just seems just painfully obvious that we see more and more of this going on, because the one thing you don't mess with in the eyes of the Lord are the children. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing worse, I think, you can do, more or less, to a human being.
Yeah, it's the ultimate sacrilege.
There you
go. The ultimate defiance. It's spitting in the face of God, is what it is.
And
evil.
And it was a real revelation to me, sadly so, that I could no longer look in a milk carton and understand that whatever's going on is going to come to an end. Right. It's an epidemic, and it'll be nothing more but milk carton children and billboard children who are not going to be found. And I tell you, what's really the sickest at all is that the high time for all this is upon us right now through the winter solstice.
That's true. I used to think Halloween was, fun and games, and then when I became an adult and went to Halloween parties, hey, maybe you could pick up the chicks and, well, we won't get into all that, but, I didn't take it seriously at all, It was just, ooga booga stuff and people dressing up, playing around. But now I realize that really is a hardcore pagan, evil holiday, in its origins. I realize most people don't go around having human sacrifices on Halloween, but they are done, There are people who do these things. There are Satanists. There are Luciferian types, and they're actually much more widespread, I believe, than people realize. Mm. I hope I don't sound paranoid there, but I know that I didn't read the book Franklin Cover-Up, but I've seen and read excerpts from it, and I know that one of the people that had been involved, he was both a victim of sexual abuse, and then he eventually became the house photographer or something. I can't remember exactly, but the guy's name was Paul Bonacci.
No, Bonacci was, you're thinking of Johnny Gosh.
Okay.
And who knows what that strange episode was all about.
Yeah.
He claims
he's not.
Bonacci
said that he saw at Bohemian Grove, he saw sexual abuse and a killing of a child.
Right.
A child sacrifice.
Well, they were having necrophilia.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get more base than that. I mean, and I'll tell you one other thing without engaging in sensationalism, but as much as Stu Webb, I think, kind of just spiraled out of control. I mean, when I first came upon him, and he was a little more apparent on GCN and stuff with guys like Statmiller. I mean, one of the things that he had said to me, and I'm not just to me alone, was that at the winter solstice, he claimed Bush and the boys get together in Sedalia, Colorado, at, quote, the castle, and you can imagine what goes on during the winter solstice. And I mean, of all the things he said and didn't say or whatever, that one is not so far-fetched if we now understand what goes on. And of course, in the Franklin,
who killed that innocent little girl there in Colorado? The little girl that had been the beauty queen, all that weirdness.
Joan Benet Ramsey.
John Benet Ramsey. Who killed that innocent little child? Who did that? Nobody did it. It just all went away because her parents happened to be extremely wealthy and powerful. Something really strange happened there.
It really is. I do believe that they did not they did not kill the child. I believe that they probably know who did it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And then Patsy dies. Well, Patsy dies of cancer, so okay, that's weird. I mean, not that she can't have it, but that all goes away. But remember something too. And I mean, if we go even further with this, I am stunned by how many children just get plucked from their bedrooms.
Right.
And I mean, I know it happens. I mean,
kids get pulled. Kids go into shopping malls with their parents, and somebody turns around, and the kid's gone.
Yeah, but,
this happens much more frequently than I realize. I've read a little bit about it recently, and it's amazing how many. And these are not bad parents. I mean, these people, they just take their eye off their kid for a second, and somebody's grabbed them.
Yeah, but how about what is it? Even in the Smart case in California, what was it? A second floor bedroom they went into, or something like that?
Yeah.
How does that stuff happen? And I'm not impugning anybody's reputation. It's just like if you think that you're safe once inside your home, well, guess again. And I mean, it happens with too much regularity. And we had a high profile case down here in Florida with less than, shall we say, middle class people. But again, a young girl gets plucked from a bedroom. So I mean, but that was just that was singular sickness.
But I've read stories about these crackheads, women who are crackheads who sell their children, and God only knows what happens to the child. And it's just it's so, the level of evil, the level of just outright depravity, is it's hard. It's just hard for me to imagine. And now they're saying in this case, the Penn State case with Sandusky, that maybe he was pimping these kids out to other people.
Oh, this is
wealthy and powerful people. I don't know if that's true or not. God, I hope it's not.
It's starting to look a little more widespread and that much more horrible. And John Bonanno sent me an email, and he said, well, consider these, quote, coincidences. And I'm looking at this going, oh, man, are we in a Franklin cover-up again? Now, here's another thing that's unsettling, by the way. And I heard this from two people. One was Mary Hartman, who had been on about and that's another thing.
Mary Hartman, yeah.
Well, you remember that? I mean, that's why I thought of her with that Zanesville situation with the exotic.
She faded away altogether.
Huh?
She kind of faded away altogether. I don't know what happened to her, but I guess she maybe got pressured, and that was some pretty dangerous territory she was in.
Yeah, but all I know, I wasn't happy with the way things ended, and she had the blog going. She was going to write a book. I said to her, whatever you get, just send me whatever text you got. I'll just proof it for you if you want me to do it.
Yeah.
But she started getting into this research thing, and she just kept going with it, like she was preoccupied by it. And unfortunately, in time to come, when anybody hears those Beyond the Grassy Knoll shows, and that was a particular year I did a show, and I mean that's when it all came unglued for me because of the stuff I was seeing, and a lot of strange stuff went on. And when I realized, when she came on one of the last times, I kind of had it with her. The 4 shows I have up there are the ones where she spoke to that exotic exotic wildlife refuge. But here's what I heard from her, and also a colleague of Ellen Lachter. Let's see. Hold on a second. I'm there. Okay. Her name is, I think it's Pamela Noblet. She was on during the Nolapalooza years ago. That was July 4th, I think, 2008 or something like that. I don't remember. And they had just come out with a book in which Ellen Lachter had written one of the essays. And Mary Hartman met John DeCamp and said he was sleazy. And I don't know how it came up before the show with the Noblets, but she said the same thing to me, and they don't even know each other, that John DeCamp is sleazy. In fact, of late, DeCamp now says, oh, I don't even know if all I wrote was true. So, but now there's another guy out there, I think by the name of Nick Bryant, who has written a book called Franklin Scandal, and I'd like to have him on, because I'd like to go to somebody other than DeCamp to find out what was going on there.
Another guy that, I don't remember where I heard this, it was on one of the a talk show similar years. The guy was in Colorado. I believe he died a few years back. He had a pretty good show. I listened to it occasionally. At any rate, he had a cop on who had been involved in the Johnny Gosch case and other cases of child abduction.
You talking about Corbin?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's dead.
Yeah.
Dead.
And he had a show on where he had a cop from New York. He's a pretty tough old guy, you know. And
yeah, I remember him.
He pursued a bunch of cases on that, and he had a lot of information. It was shocking. It was really shocking. And you know, they frustrated him at every turn. You know, when he would try to get the goods on these people.
Frustrated is the best that could have happened to him.
Yeah.
So, all right. Where are we at?
Well, continue to talk about the Bormann organization, and from Constantine's work here. The Nazi Party and the SS as organizations got away intact. They got away with the money, the Reichsbank treasury, $15 billion in 1945 money. This included a gold tooth, the tooth gold, excuse me. He's talking about when the Nazis went into the camps and pulled the teeth of people that had gold teeth after they had killed them. Guinness calls it the world's largest unsolved robbery. Then there was all the stolen art, pieces of which to this day occasionally surface. The Nazis did very well in the war from a business standpoint. War is a business. It is fought for material gain. The Nazis gained materially and lived to spend it, thus they won the war. They did not win as much as they wanted to win, but who does? They did win a great deal. What they lost was territory. What they gained was treasure, new friends, and experience. The treasure included a couple of U-boats full of bearer bonds, numbered stock shares, and patent certificates. This represented, and he quotes here from The Avengers by Michael Bar-Zohar, the hardcore of Nazi wealth in Latin America. In 1944, a great treasure had been sent secretly across the Atlantic, the famous Bormann treasure. Toward the end of 1943, Bormann gave orders for Action Fuhrland, or Operation Land of Fire, to begin. This operation involved the transport from Germany to Argentina of several tons of gold, securities, shares, and works of art. Several U-boats arrived in Argentine waters after the capitulation of Germany. They were the carriers of bundles of documents, industrial patents, and securities. On July 10, 1945, the U-530 surfaced at the mouth of the River Plate and entered the port of La Plata. The following month, on August 17th, the U-977 also arrived at La Plata. In accordance with international conventions, both U-boats were interned by Argentina and later handed over to the United States Authority. And to the surprise of few, this is him again, Alex again, to the surprise of few, they were found to be empty of treasure. And in the book in Avengers, he says, 2 more U-boats, according to reliable sources, appeared off an uninhabited stretch of the coast of Patagonia between July 23rd and 29th, 1945. In occupied Germany, one could neither vote with these shares nor could one collect interest, dividends, nor royalties. When West Germany again took its place among the nations of the world in 1955, the Bundestag immediately changed all this. The holders of these once worthless scraps of paper suddenly once again possessed the incredible wealth. Consider the case of I.G. Farben. And this is from David M. Nichol, the Chicago Daily News, 1947. He observed, the trial of I.G. Farben's leading officials for war crimes is like Topsy. It just growed. It's still growing. Some of the more starry-eyed in Nuremberg and throughout the world would like to see it as a crusade against monopoly and big business. Others, including Farben's 24 crotchety and dyspeptic executives in the dock, believe it is purely persecution. No trial at all was planned in the beginning. Investigating teams were interested in German finances as such, and the possible sources of reparation for Nazi damages to other countries, and in tracing as much as possible the loot the Germans had concealed outside their border. Not the least of their interest was Farben's huge headquarters building in Frankfurt. Almost undamaged by bombs and fighting, it has served as the administration's center for American occupation forces ever since. German Army headquarters had ordered Farben's records destroyed. Many of them were. That sounds strange. Mm-hmm. One official has compiled from memory a list of the most important ones he burned. It runs 14 pages of single-spaced typing. A handful of officials were held for detailed but routine questioning. One of them, particular 63-year-old George von Schnitzler, one time head of Farben's entire sales organization, began to talk. From Farben's standpoint, the damage was done. Justice Robert W. Jackson, the United States prosecutor for the original Nuremberg trial against Goering and his mates, felt industry was heavily involved in the crime with which the Nazi leaders were charged. He proposed at first to include one Farben official among the defendants, but the case against Farben was so complex in itself that it might have been overshadowed by more general charges. Gustav Krupp von Bohlen and Halbach, Germany's gunmaker for half a century, was indicted instead. But the aging Krupp upset the plans by taking so seriously ill that he could not be tried. An unsuccessful move was made to substitute his son. In the end, big business went unrepresented before the International Tribunal, except indirectly through Hitler's financial wizard, Hjalmar Schacht, and Schacht was acquitted. Meanwhile, the Farben officials themselves can't believe it has happened. Their American friends haven't come so far except by mail. Letters are delivered in prison, but they go through regular censorship channels. And in an effort to avoid this, some have been sent to prison officials through APO numbers, but these have been returned. IG Farben was broken up on paper into 9 companies, the big 3, Bayer, BASF, and Host, and 9 smaller firms, including AGFA, Calais, Casella, and Hewells. Those in allied countries who demanded the dissolution of IG as one means of ensuring world peace were bitterly disappointed. And that's from The Crime and Punishment of IG Farben by Joseph Bargan. And he goes on, when these firms still owned and controlled by the same families, organizations, and in many cases the same individuals are considered as a whole, IG Farben is bigger and more powerful than ever. Corporate camouflage, the art of concealing foreign properties from enemy governments, has a special place in the history of IG Farben. Unlike IG's involvement in mass murder and slave labor, which was a wartime aberration, sure, IG's program of camouflage long predated and outlived the war. Its political effects will persist for years to come. In German, they call this Tarnung, the magic hood that renders its wearer invisible. Camouflage really does work. It's still working. Consider the case of board member Hermann Schmitz, who became the chairman of Farben's managing board in 1935. It's a good bet that if Hermann Schmitz were alive today, that he would bear witness as to who really won. Schmitz died contented, having witnessed the resurgence of IG Farben, albeit in altered corporate forms, a money machine that continues to generate profits for the old IG shareholders and enormous international power for the German cadre, directing the workings of the successor firms. To all appearances, he died in relatively reduced circumstances in 1960 at the age of 79, although still immensely wealthy during his lifetime. Any information about his fortunes seemingly vanished with his death, but those who knew him believe it still exists. He was a master manipulator, the corporate and financial wizard, the magician who could make money appear and disappear and reappear again. Schmidt's wealthy IG Farben bearer bonds converted to the big 3 successor firms. Shares in Standard Oil of New Jersey, General Motors, and other U.S. blue-chip industrial stocks, and the 700 secret companies controlled in his time by IG, as well as shares in the 750 corporations he helped Bormann establish during the Second World War, has increased in all segments of the modern industrial world. The Bormann organization in South America utilizes the voting power of the Schmitz Trust, along with their own assets, to guide the multinationals they control as they keep steady the economic course of the fatherland. The resurgence of West Germany was due to hard work by its people, assistance from the Marshall Plan, an infusion of buying orders from the United States military establishment, and an economic policy that enabled business and industry to wheel and deal in world markets and come up with profits, allowing businesses to have its head to go back the formula adopted by Hitler during the 1930s. He harnessed his people instead of nationalizing industry. That was from Martin Bormann, Nazi in Exile again. It's also true that the resurgence of West Germany was financed in part by Nazi blood money, some of it looted with pliers from the mouths of its rightful owners. It is easy and profitable to blame a dead, crazy man for one's mistakes and crimes. Consider, for example, the enormous mileage the Contras and their friends got out of CIA chief Bill Casey's convenient demise. Hitler has assumed mythic proportions since his death. In life, he was mainly a front man, a mouthpiece, a lightning rod, and above all, the Nazis' great communicator. While the masses worshipped him like a god, his friends plotted behind his back, used him as a cat's paw and a scapegoat, and perhaps cynically sacrificed him to save their own skins and fortune. Hitler has had cleverly parlayed his position as figurehead and control over the military by rewording the soldier's oath. However, military power has always been subordinate to economic power, if for no other reason than because lead cannot be mined with bayonets. The purse strings of the Nazi Party were controlled by Bormann, and Bormann got away. So did the purse. The alleged Bormann skull is that of a grisly stand-in, a substitute. Substituting one body for another has been employed, much used by General Heinrich Müller of the Gestapo. It was he who coordinated the details of Bormann's disappearance. When Muller's grave was exhumed by court order in 1963, the grave held 3 skeletons, none of which even remotely resembled Muller's short stature and high forehead. It was Mr. Brandt and his government that provided Martin Bormann with what amounted to a passport to freedom in 1973 by stating that the former Hitler aide had perished in Berlin in 1945. That's also from Martin Bormann, Nazi in Exile. Bormann had help from his friends, consider, if you will, Hermann Abs. While Germany's bankers were collectively responsible for the financing of Hitler's war effort, the dean of them all is Hermann Joseph Abs. Money was his life, and his astuteness in banking and international financial manipulations enabled Deutsche Bank to serve as a leader in fueling the ambitions and accomplishments of Adolf Hitler and Martin Bormann. His dominance was retained when the Federal Republic of Germany picked itself up from the ashes. He was still there as chairman of the Dutch Bank, director of IG Farben and such others as Daimler-Benz and the giant electrical conglomerate Siemens. Abs became a financial advisor to the first West German Chancellor Konrad Adenauer and was a welcome visitor in the federal chancellery under Mr. Adenauer's successors Ludwig Erhard and Kurt George Kiesinger. Bormann's friendship with Dr. Hermann Joseph Abs predated Abs' moves into the management of Deutsche Bank. Dr. Abs had been a partner in the prestigious private bank of Delbruck, Schickler and Company in Berlin. Recalling those days, Abs has written, "The Reich Chancellery in Berlin was its largest account, and it was through this account that Adolf Hitler received his salary as Chancellor of the Reich. Reichsleiter Bormann knew that his relationship with Abs would tighten as his own power grew. He knew in 1943 that when his Nazi banking committee well established, he had the means to set new Nazi state policy when the time was right for his general transfer of capital, gold, stocks, and bearer bonds to safety in neutral nations. History has largely ignored bankers in favor of other subjects. History and those who write it and their masters apparently want us to think politicians and generals are more important to the state. Bankers, of course, feel differently. They tend, and not without reason, to be as furtive as much as possible. While we are cheering the politician and saluting the general, we're not noticing the banker who's picking our pockets. This suits the banker's ends. Thus, history slants their relative importance. Baron Kurt von Schroeder, a well-known banker and economic advisor to Bormann's Economic Committee, commented that Dr. Hermann Joseph Abs, chairman of Deutsche Bank, was particularly important to the government of the Third Reich. His influence was mainly with the Reichsbank and the Ministry of Economics. Abs proved very valuable to the party and to the government by using his bank to assist the government in doing business in the occupied countries and other foreign countries. Abs enjoyed excellent relations with Walter Funk, who was both president of the Reichsbank and head of the Ministry of Economics. I think I'll take a break there and make whatever comments or questions.
Well, I tell you what, I don't know how close you are to the end of the material you wanted to cover, but if you wanted to hold it right there, there's something I'd like to throw out to you that we could end on, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
We could continue some of this. There's a few other things I wanted to talk about, but we can continue on later. Yeah,
because obviously I'm looking at 1:15 into this, so
yeah.
If you've got more, why not make it just another show?
Yeah, sure.
And I just want to throw this out to you because you and I have been dealing with some information, and I guess where I'm going with this, with regard to Germany and everything, I think right now, and it's been going on for about a year or two, I'd say clearly from 2007 to now that, well, everybody, you know where I'm going to go with this stuff.
Yeah.
These idiots who think you got the NWO on the run. All right. My point is, right now, we are in the middle of something. We have no idea how big it is. This whole financial debacle is not by accident. It wasn't like all these like supposedly astute people in the business of finance and banking screwed up. Mm-mm. This is intended, and we're looking at something that I don't think.
Grab.
Huh?
It's a money grab.
Well, I mean, when you look at world rule, you've got to obviously take over a certain amount, if not all, fields that there are, including commerce and banking. I mean, and that's scriptural also.
Well, you know, we were talking. I've read that quote by Dorothy Thompson a couple of times.
Right.
That the Germans wanted to conquer by economic means. It's much easier, obviously bloodless for the most part, and it's really the most effective way to gain power is through economics. And that the Germans told her there was no way they ever intended to invade the United States because they had friends here who would help them take over. You know, friends in high places on Wall Street and in the government. And they still have friends in Wall Street and in the government. And that's what's going down. I mean, all the Nazis didn't live in Germany and don't live there now. I mean, we have our own, hall of shame for American Nazis. So do the British. So do the French. So do many other, people of many other nations.
Well, stating that what's going on has been planned, even though it looks like it's chaos. We don't have to go into that about order and chaos, but that's a great example of it. Let's call it what it is. Mm-hmm. And that is, this has been allowed to happen. And from that, I mean, everything I look at in America, and I know I'm hopping around here, but when you think of all the things that have been constrained upon us, have constricted us for the sake of terrorism, it's a joke. I mean,
yeah, it's setting up the crackdown, the eventual martial law that's going to come down in this country. And I don't know when, but I assume it'll be fairly soon.
And again, that's something everybody likes to talk about. But I'm wondering if we're even beyond that, to be honest with you. Yeah. But this whole financial situation has been created. It's the old Hegelian dialectic. Okay, we understand that. And like I said,
a good depression to get people in the mood for fascism.
But
eventually feudalism.
Well, it was you. I'll tell you, it was you. And I have to laugh because this name has been pronounced 17 different ways. The Koch brothers.
Yeah. I don't know if it's Koch or Koch.
It's
I just
Koch.
know they're a couple of bastards.
Well, it's Koch, Koch, and Koch. One of the.
I prefer the first two, but I guess the third one's more illustrative.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
kind of fits, but
what do they call that? Eponymous? No, right.
Here we go. Adolescent humor. By golly, we got it in there.
At this time of night, it's fair game. But as you pointed out, there's a certain, and this is where I found also with my famous example about being thrown out of that one group, the Cyprus Consultant Group, because they were supposed to be talking about health, and he went into politics. The people who are out there with the Tea Party especially, I mean, you've got soccer moms who are as nasty and venomous as anybody down on East 32nd Street. I mean, they all look like, nice little people, but I tell you, the depth of hatred and meanness is so deep in them.
I saw an excerpt from one of these town hall discussions, debates with the Republican candidates, and they were talking about, they asked the question, well, if somebody is dying in a coma and does not have health insurance, what should be done about that? Yeah. And there were people in the audience, and I remember this one woman, this ugly, middle-aged, matronly type with a screwed-up, evil-looking face going, "Let him die! Let him die!" Kept screaming, and I'm going, my God,
I know, but
and a lot of these people would be the first to proclaim themselves to be Christians. Of course, they haven't got an ounce of mercy or an ounce of compassion in their entire bodies, and not to mention their soul, And it's just, it's frightening. It really is.
Well, but there is a fascism arising in this country. I mean, there's a lot of plates being spun at the same time. Mm-hmm. When we are inside of it, we don't necessarily understand the scope of it. But and I try to step back and say, what am I in the middle of here? Because something clearly is going on. So I was saying the banking thing is going to be part of a totalitarian global situation without a doubt.
Well, they're setting up a Great Depression type scenario, which brought Hitler into power.
Well, and
they're going to bring, and that was, a further move toward the ultimate goal of world government under, a total totalitarian system. And, you can see the parallels there between Weimar Germany and our country. And Viz, I really think one thing that's not talked about very much, well, we haven't talked about it, I'll put it that way, is the tremendous economic pressure on the people in Germany, which forced them over the edge into picking a radical candidate for their ruler in Hitler, and that is the extreme economic burden that they were under as far as inflation. People in Weimar Germany at one point would go to a restaurant and they would pay up front before they ever got their meal because they might not have enough money left over at the end, because that's how much the inflation would have taken place
at the time,
and the time they ate their meal.
Well,
people would go to the store to buy a loaf of bread, maybe a couple of eggs or whatever, and they would have to carry a wheelbarrow full of money. The paper money was, they had totally devalued the currency. The inflation was rampant, runaway inflation. And I just don't know how long it's going to be before that happens here.
Well, it is happening, but it's happening incrementally. It isn't as bad. Now, what I'm saying is that if we're headed for an economic collapse, of course, then all bets are off. I mean, with that kind of juggernaut, it'll be down on you in a second. But in the meantime, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts. All the money, I mean, we forget that every time there's a hike in gas prices and such, it goes across the board. I mean, if you were to go into a supermarket and you had written down prices even a year ago and taken a look at what you're paying now, you'd flip.
Oh, yeah.
And what cracks me up there, too, and here's another thing, and that is the choice that you used to have that used to create some kind of price competition, which made it good for the consumer, is gone. I'm looking now at the store brand and maybe two others, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great.
Well, it's like gas prices. I mean,
sure.
What was it, 2009, they finally got it up over $3 a gallon, then it went back down to $2.95 or whatever. And now, I can't remember, I really need to chart that, look at it and see, get the data. But now, it's not ever going to go back down below $3.
Of course it's not. Everyone forgets that after they check.
They push it up,
right.
People get pissed off, and then
they back it down.
Conserve, right. And they'll drive it down a little bit, and then they wait for the right moment. Obviously, they love summer because people are going on vacation, and boom, you got it up to a higher level. And they just keep jerking people around with this. And meanwhile, their costs really aren't going up that much.
No, not at all. You see, that's just it. And that's why when I had the discussions about, or give and takes about free energy and stuff, hey, believe me, I mean, and somebody emailed me after I had related, about some of the correspondences I've gotten, and someone said to me that they knew someone personally, maybe a friend of the father or something like that, whatever. But I mean, where a guy found who made a carburetor that could get 200 miles to the gallon. I mean, I spoke to somebody about Caggiano's 100 mile per gallon carburetor, and that guy disappeared, and this other one disappeared, and you get to the point when you realize that. Yes, it would be great to get off petroleum, but we're not going to because it's too great a tool for control. So they're going to tell you that it's fossil fuel. They're going to tell you that it's finite, but we're not going to get off it. And they're going to play these games with the prices. And like you said, you go up $2, you back down a quarter. You go up $1 again, you back down 50 cents. And it goes on and on. And I'm laughing because I remember, as you well do, when you were getting carburetors back in the 70s and back at that fiasco oil shortage thing, where all of a sudden Honda Civic came out with something like a 50 mile per gallon car, and everybody thought that was like inspired by Jehovah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
A miracle car.
Yes, it was. And then you got other ones that said, okay, we have to play this game, and they go up to 35 miles per gallon, and then through the 80s and 90s, I watch it back down.
They go to the SUVs. My God, get one of those gas guzzling suckers.
Yeah, but it's funny because
it's a status symbol, Viz. If you don't have one, man, you need one.
But when I got married, I mean, I said to Lady Viz, I'm going, we've been through this thing. Where are we going? The vehicles are bigger than they were in the 60s. They're more gas guzzling. Doesn't anybody realize they're going to do it again? Ta-da.
They keep sticking it to the public because people just, I swear, there are just a lot of people running around who are dumber than a stump. I mean, they don't have any sense. They don't look at, anything on a deeper level than, what's on American Idol and Dancing with the Stars. You know, it's amazing what they, you know, and the people, the oligarchy, the New World Order, or whatever you want to call the elites. You know, they must sit in their boardrooms and laugh themselves into a stupor about how stupid the American public is, and how the American public will buy any kind of crap that they try to force off on them.
All right, here's one for you. You reminded me of something. And let me throw out the scenario. I have found it interesting, and this sometimes happens rather quickly, but especially throughout this year, and I would say inside that year, without a doubt, in the last 6 months. And that is, when you're watching mainstream news, they would normally say something like this: well, the people's perception of Congress's failure to act. And that would normally be what they would say. They're not even doing that now. Now they're saying, with Congress unable to act. Now why is that a big difference? Because now they've got everybody thinking that they are completely worthless. And I'm saying to myself, if that's true, there's an end game to this. And what is it? And I'm thinking that it's going to be, across a couple of years, an inducement for American people to say, look,
we need a strong man.
No, right. This 3 branches of government thing ain't happening. It ain't working out. Let's do something different. I swear to God, that's where we're headed, and it's happening right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but you see what I'm saying? See, media
that's definitely what's going down. I mean, it's different. There's not a rough, there's a rough parallel, but there's not a direct parallel between the United States and what happened in Weimar, Germany. But there is a rough parallel. And that's what happened with the people there. I mean, every day of their lives, you know, especially in the urban centers in Germany, people, you know, would be trying to get to work. You know, they'd be on the streetcars and the trains, or they'd be walking down the street, and the next thing they know, they would get caught in a fight between communists and Nazis, you know, punching each other out and shooting each other sometimes in the middle of the street.
All right.
It was constant, you know.
Hold it right there.
There was always violence in the streets.
Hold it right there.
Yeah, sure.
What about just what you said? Nazis and communists punching each other out?
Right.
Occupy Wall Street, Tea Party.
Exactly, brother. That's what's coming down. And that shit's going to get a lot more violent, excuse my language. But it's going to get a lot more violent.
You can tell when a Texan gets worked up. But you know, again, I mean, we haven't talked about this stuff before. We don't even haven't emailed about it.
No.
I mean, I'm looking at it where I'm at, and you're looking at it from where you're at. And when I saw this kind of stuff, because the thing is, the only thing people identify Occupy Wall Street with is yelling at the 1% who make all this money. That comes off to Republicans in the right wing as being basically Bolshevik, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, you take a look at the Tea Parties, and they're all about, we don't want big government. And that's true, too. But the problem is, it's both. And the thing is, it's like I've said, look, I don't care what those guys get, because you'll never be able to curtail them. Every time, supposedly, Wall Street puts some kind of brakes on themselves or some kind of harness, they make it up somewhere else. It's a joke. Leave them alone. Let them do what they're going to do. My problem is how can we have this mantra? This is another thing we're saying in America now. Well, it's the small business who create jobs. Well, I'm like, well, why does it have to be the small business? Does that give corporations, let them off the hook for starting here, getting strong here, and then going somewhere else and taking everything with them? All right, now, you see, now that's getting into the human mind, psyche now, too. It's like, okay, leave the corporations alone. It's the small business guy who does it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm looking at this manipulation going on. I mean, you talk about somebody kicking their feet up in the air. Edward Bernays must be spinning in his coffin.
Well, you know, I watched, I normally don't watch television news, but for some unknown reason last night I watched NBC. You know, of course, NBC is, I mean, there really isn't a real left in America. There's a real right, I believe, but there's not a real left like a socialist, communist left. Most of these people are just, you know, goofy liberals, and this show's called The Ed Show, and he's a goofy liberal. But he had people on, they were just talking up this Occupy Wall Street. Boy, they're picking on these brave people out there, you know. These people are frustrated, and they're doing something about it. Now they want to come in and smear them and arrest them and gas them, and, you know. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, all you're doing is giving more encouragement to pump up the volume, you know, and to get them out there to really kick out the jams. And how long is it going to be before people start fighting the cops? How long is it going to be before the right and the left in this country start fighting each other in the streets? It won't be long. because NBC is pumping it up from the liberal left side, and you've got Fox on the right, and all the different media outlets, and it's all working toward the same purpose. They're all on the same side. They want a totalitarian government, and that's the best way to get it, because when the strong man steps in, all the violence stops. You have your crackdown, your martial law, and it's nothing but provocateuring, and that's all it is. And people are so stupid, they're going to go out there and buy into that. Does anybody really think that some Wall Street hotshot gives a hoot whether you go out there and carry a sign that says, "You're bad, you're greedy, I don't like you, you need," they don't care, man. That's what Wall Street does. They're there to make money. It's all about greed, It's like they're going to shame them with some kind of moral, wagging their finger at them, These people don't care.
No, they really don't.
Give me a break.
And that's why I'm saying you can never punish them, because no matter what you do, they're going to make it back. When I was listening to that financial guy on WCBS 880 AM out of New York, and what he went ahead and said is, and this was like a couple of years ago, he's going to be, okay, what are you going to do? You're going to fine them, and you know what they're going to do? They'll package it into a derivative and make money on it.
Yeah.
You leave them alone, because they're going to do what they're going to do. My only problem was, well, then create jobs. If you can do whatever you want, man, but at least create some jobs.
This whole deal, 3 years back, when the Wall Street bailout came out, and they started talking about, is anybody stupid enough to think that a banker, somebody who's sharp as far as finances and loaning capital out, is dumb enough to think that somebody with a very low income or no income can afford a mortgage loan for like $250,000, $300,000 house? I mean, this is all done expecting them to go down. That was part of it. They were betting you would go down, and they're making money off of that.
Yeah, right.
And these people are so stupid. They go in, they take the bait. Oh golly, I can get a big house. Yeah, you're there for a month. Before you're completely cleaned out financially, there's no way you can afford the payments. And they knew that. And it was like, and then of all the gall, the American public, through its tax money, was supposed to bail out these corporations who had created this mess intentionally. They robbed us twice. And the American public just can't seem to catch on to that. And, I remember a friend of mine, I tried to warn him. I kept telling him, the Republicans will do, they're going to yahoo for the Republicans. And I said, yeah, they're going to do a whole lot about it, man. They're really going to fix that. And when the bailout came down, he was really angry, and he wrote to his congressman and got a letter back saying, well, it's for the greater good, And he went into like a spasm over that, and I said, man, don't you get it? These people are put into office by Wall Street money. They're going to do whatever Wall Street wants to do.
Yep.
There's a direct connection there. Don't you get it? How do you think somebody can get a job and can get elected to Congress unless they have an awful lot of money? And most of them don't have it on their own, so they have to get it from somewhere. So they're in the back pocket of these powerful interest groups. It's a corporatocracy.
Yes, it is.
It's a corporate state. That's Mussolini. At least was honest about it and said it should be called fascism. Should be called corporatism because it's a merger of the corporation and the state. And I'd go even one farther and say it's a merger of the corporation, the state, and organized religion.
Yeah, I was going to say the church, yeah. Mm-hmm. You're right. And that's exactly true. There is no difference between, people don't understand right now that corporations run the country.
Yeah.
They still think, I can't understand for the life of me how some of these people can go out, and not only go out, but be so rabid to get behind these candidates. And I got to tell you, one of the other things I think that shows a sense of humor of the elites, they have put out a bunch of people for the Republican nomination that are some of the worst. What horses' asses. I cannot believe Perry and Kaine. And look, these guys are idiots. Sarah Palin and Bachmann, huh?
Oh, you don't have to tell me about Perry. He's our esteemed governor.
But look, you've been around as long as I have, and for the time that we had TV, we've watched stuff. Have you ever seen candidates in debates that have been so inept as these characters?
No, and Perry is a case in point. He went in, I think, last week in one of the debates, and he was going to make a point and completely forgot what he was going to talk about.
Yeah, the third.
He stood there looking like an idiot.
The third agency he's going to do away with.
Yeah.
You know, and then Kane comes on the scene, and look, this guy is the Black Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Would you want to buy a used car from this guy? I mean, he is so slick with the oration, and now he's screwing up.
And then the Joe Biden and Clinton all together, you know, with a sex scandal along with it. You know.
Oh yeah, well that didn't happen.
I mean,
That's right.
these people are really, what pillars of the community they are.
Well, I mean, but look at Michelle Bachmann.
Yeah,
I mean,
he puts the squeeze on some girl, you know, to try to get some at work or whatever. I mean, how sleazy can you get?
Well,
and then lie about it.
How come nobody's calling them a racist? I mean, way to white women. What are they all white blondes that you like, Kane, or what? Why you'd be an equal opportunity, harasser.
Oh man, it's just
they're horrible.
And it's right up in your face, and these dumb butts will go out there and stand in line in the cold up north, to vote for these clowns.
I know.
It's just like, my God, how dumb are you?
Now,
can't you see what they're doing?
In the meantime, especially when it comes to things that have to do with organic food and such, I know Kay in Colorado gets an email newsletter, Lady Viz does, and there especially you'll see them freaking out about the legislation being passed that is absolutely conducive for big agra and horrible for the end user, like us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm looking at these Soccer Sally moms in these groups that I got thrown out of, and I'm like, well, you're getting all wet over a candidate. All these laws are being passed, and you care about that because you're in this thing. You're in this group because it was supposed to be about organic food and such. And who do you think is passing that stuff? Do you think it's always the other party, the other guy? They're all doing it to you, and you're out there, pumping your fists in the air for a candidate, and you're getting screwed as we speak. Oh. And they don't get it. I just want to share something with you real quick because it reminded me of something. I think you like Steinbeck as an author.
I do.
All right.
I do.
A year ago, I wrote an article in the Inside the Grassy Knoll number 6. It was 2010, and I called it "The Winter of Art Disconnect." And I started with a quote from Steinbeck, and this is exactly where we're at. And he writes, "It's all fine to say, time will heal everything. This too shall pass away. People will forget. And things like that when you are not involved. But when you are, there is no passage of time. People do not forget, and you are in the middle of something that does not change." John Steinbeck. And that's exactly where we're at,
Exactly.
And while everybody just get all worked up about this stuff, nobody's stepping back and saying, you know what, this whole thing isn't really working. Maybe I should find out why. And, and I tell you what, some people are getting hip, but they're only a minuscule amount compared to everyone out there. And they're usually the ones, which I can understand, have to just more or less keep it amongst themselves and figure out what they're going to do. Because these people, I mean, honest to God, can you imagine if you took away their fantasy about politics meaning something and voting meaning something and political candidates really being different? If you took that away from them, you know what it reminds you of? It reminds you in the Bible. Remember, who was it? Who was it? Was it Paul who brought some woman who was a diviner into acceptance of Jesus Christ? Do you remember that? And they were businessmen.
It's so vague. I apologize. Sometimes Bible stories just, go past me, but I kind of vaguely remember.
It was in Acts.
Yeah.
And I just remember it because thinking about it in present day terms really brings it home. The point was, when the woman was taken out of her bondage and accepted Jesus Christ, all the businessmen who were using her as their enterprise were a little bit irritated with Paul, I guess. But you know what I mean? In other words, it's like if you take away their fantasy, they're going to get really nasty, and they're going to go after the messenger and not the message. And that's what I see happening here. If you were to take those people away and say, you know what? Nope, the parties don't make a difference. These guys don't run the country. The people who run for office don't run the country. I don't know what they do. I think they would become unglued as if gravity failed to work tomorrow.
Right.
unhinged completely.
Well, I'll tell you what, we need to keep watching this situation with the Wall Street occupation and the Tea Party, both of them.
Oh yeah,
because those people are going to square off eventually. You know, I don't know how it'll all come down, but I think there's so much anger on both sides, you know, and people are just blindly hating, you know, the government in general and politicians in general and each other, and everybody's running around not knowing that the real culprit are the corporatists who are really running this country. And I think you're going to see massive violence in the streets. It may take a while, but it's coming. And you've got people provocateuring it, like this guy on the Ed show. You know, he had his people on, and they go, oh, they're being persecuted. They're doing a great job. You know, they're doing what, you know, this is democracy in action. And I'm thinking to myself, democracy in action? I mean, it's just a bunch of people running around with signs, you know, trying to shame somebody. They have no clear agenda. I don't see them doing anything that's going to help anybody. I don't blame them for being frustrated. I am too. But you know, and they're right. Wall Street is jacking this country up, but they're not doing anything constructive. I mean, it's not helping anything. If nothing else, it's just interfering with commerce, you know, in New York City, where there are a lot of people that don't have really anything to do with the brokers, and you know, just some guy's trying to drive a cab. You know, he's trying to make a delivery in a UPS truck, or you know, he can't get around, can't get his job done. You know, they're not doing any good for anybody.
After a while, it gets to a point where they truly overstay their welcome, and they never really got the message across. And that's part of the whole portrayal by the media. I understand that. But it's all, you know, all you see are things about, well, the 1%. And now even commercials, you know, all these like really clever people who write ad copy are now embracing, well, if you're part of the 99%, then you need a break, you know, and you should go here because of savings. It's like, well, you shut up with the 99%. Shut up. And that's what I'm so sick of it. You know, everybody grabs this stuff and they make this like little
soundbite.
Well, yeah, it's like Chatty Cathy.
Slogan.
Yeah. You pull the string and the thing comes out with 99%. You know, shut up. But this is all part.
Cathy.
Remember that?
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you how many of those I punched out. You're an idiot. Yeah, that's what you used to call like pull string dolls. That's all they are, man. They come out with these little sound bites.
And these stupid signs are what I'm looking at this stuff and I'm going, man, I learned all about this, the ineffectiveness of this kind of crap in the 60s. You know, going to anti-war demonstration, you know, carrying a sign. I carried a sign once.
Right.
It didn't stop the war. Nobody cared. I was just another guy going, hooray for us. You know, you're bad. War's bad. You know, it's meaningless. They don't care. And unfortunately, I was in one demonstration where the cops just went nuts. I mean, started throwing tear gas and people getting clubbed. And, it was, you know, and I thought to myself, you know, I've got better things to do with my time. This is, you know, this isn't helping anybody. It's not proving anything. It's just going to get people's heads busted. You know? Nothing. It's stupid. You know, it's just a waste of energy. And the sad part is I was kind of a starry-eyed, goofy kid. You know, thought this could do some good. You know, and people have seen the civil rights marches, and that did do some good. But a lot of people got badly hurt. You know, and like we talked about before, once Kent State came down and they shot some people. And it was like, you know, I think they're serious about this, and I really don't want to be out there. And I said to myself, you know, I'm not going out there unarmed. I'm not going out there at all, you know. Get that nonsense.
What's really interesting right now is that we had the Arab Spring where everybody was running their mouth about, well, it's great to see them have democracy, and they were backing all the people that came out in the streets, and they were behind them. And this is in America where you have people come out in the streets and they get their heads split open.
And what's been the result of the Arab Spring? The ultra-right in those countries, especially with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, are taking over in those countries.
Yeah, I mean, right.
The Islamic, fundamentalist, ultra-right, fascist Nazi types are now in control. Yeah, you had an Arab Spring, but you're going to have a nuclear winter with those guys take over.
Ooh, Larry, waxing poetic there.
Yeah, there you
Ooh,
go.
I like that. That was good. All right.
That there's a gem.
I never thought. Would you read on a bathroom wall or what?
No, I just
Well, no, that was good. Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it. That was good.
I every once in a while I used to write poetry, Viz. I did, man.
Woo.
I was a sensitive guy, not that sensitive, but sensitive enough to write poetry. Yep, had a couple of poems published in high school anthology. Yeah, I used to have them dreams,
Before life crushed me.
I was trying to get chicks. Some of them like that sensitive type guy,
Yes, you keep
until
that.
They realize, you're just another.
Keep that one tear duct working. Yeah. And lastly, this is the other thing. The whole bit about that chilling statement that was made by Louis Brandeis a long time ago about the most precious right that an American has is the right to be left alone.
Yeah.
But this is where we're going, because the other thing is that you're never going to be left alone. The whole idea of a Kafka-type government is that you can't find a place where they're not going to be, that they'll prod you about everything, even if it isn't any, something heroic. It's like, how many times do you want to be poked with a stick in the course of a day?
I'll tell you something that is a good illustration of what you're talking about, the Kafka-esque type control, is if you get on this no-fly list,
boy,
where you're considered to be a risk, a possible terrorist, you can't even find out how you got there.
No.
And a lot of people can't even find out, there's no information. It's like you're convicted without any kind of, charges being brought against you. I mean, if somebody just didn't like your face or
well, that's another thing, right?
It's like, my God.
Well, the gentleman wrote me from outside Detroit about going into the inner city, and he's taking he's a photographer, so he's taking shots, kind of like the urban blight thing. Well, when he gets home, he finds out that somebody called the cops because they thought it was suspicious, and the Detroit Metro came out to his house, and then it got better from there. That's the kind of stuff that's going on.
Yeah, what got me is this totally legal and actually relatively harmless. A guy gets out his camera and takes a couple of shots. I mean, how's anybody being harmed?
Well, the thing is,
it's like, this makes you a criminal for just taking some shots?
But the point is also, like everything else, and that is, who is the authority that says what's suspicious?
Uh-huh.
The other thing is, and I'll have to pull that book out the other day. In fact, it actually fell out of my bookshelf, which means that I probably should do something with it. It was Providence that kicked the book out on the floor. And it was the transcript of a 2-day speech that I did a show on years ago, the speech by John Lord O'Brien in 1955 in Harvard, when he talks about that what's going on today in America. 1955, this guy said this. He goes, flies in the face of what we're all about, and that is the anonymous accusation of people who cannot confront their accuser. Mm-hmm. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I got to get that back out, because this guy was...
That's one of the basic civil rights that we've always heard about, And I know you were talking to the Informer and that guy Montgomery about, the Magna Carta. Well, that was one of the things that, they wanted was, due process of law, being able to face your accuser, not being, just thrown in jail but on someone's whim, that somebody would have to prove these charges against you and formally bring them to court, I mean, isn't that basic? I mean, that's basic Anglo-Saxon law, Anglo-Saxon jurisprudence.
Well, the point I think they were trying to make is that we have equated it with that, but honestly, right out of the chute, and that's what I asked and the audio's up there if you listen to it.
Yeah, I've listened to about half of it.
All right, because I was asking him, was it ever any good from the beginning? And basically, it was like the Pope told him, what you can do with the Magna Carta? Yeah, wipe yourself, forget about it. So it looks nice, great, guys, it isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But in this discussion I was having with Lady Viz, we talked about when are you getting your license renewed? And I'm like, I don't know, 2013 or something. She goes, well, you got to bring your birth certificate and your Social Security and all this stuff. And I looked at her, with a hatred, like she was the one that wanted this to happen. You know what I mean? But just listening to this, I'm saying to myself, you know what? Why don't you just leave me the hell alone?
Well, they gave me a thing like I had to get mine renewed this year, and they sent me a letter telling me I need to bring all that stuff, and I did. I went in there to get, but they never looked at it. But what got me was the last time I got it renewed several years back, they started a thumb scan thing. This was the reason Alex Jones went on one of his tirades there, and I went into the place where he went in here in Austin, you know, and he raised hell about it's the mark of the beast and on. And, you know, in one way he may be right. But the thing that got me about it is now they don't just want one thumbprint, they want both thumbs, you know, and they do not allow you to renew your license online. I mean, the last time,
that's it. We can't do it anymore.
I did it on. Right. Now you can't do it online.
Now we got to go
Every
in,
other time you have to go in. You know.
Yep.
So they've got to check you out. And I think next time it'll be all 10 fingers. You know, and you know, maybe a DNA sample. I wouldn't doubt they'd go to a DNA sample.
This is something I took for granted. I'm going to ask you: have you only held a Texas driver's license?
Yeah.
Okay. I was talking to Eric the blacksmith out of Connecticut, and I said something that surprised him. And I didn't realize that there aren't people like me who had like 7 different licenses. I had a license in Jersey issued to me in '68. Uh-huh. Since then, I've had one in Vermont, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Iowa, and Florida. But here's the point. In 1968, when I got that license in November, I had a number on top of it. That number is the same number I've had when I was issued licenses in the other states. My point is, forget about the national ID card. That was done already. Whatever number you have, Larry, no matter where you go, it'll be the same number on your license. In other words, we had the ID as soon as we started driving. And if it isn't that, it's a Social Security number. But the driver's license obviously has more play in our society. But you had the same number. So it was already done. You know, all this kicking up about the national ID thing, it was finished with your driver's license.
Yeah.
You know, so I was a little surprised.
Well, that's kind of like when Jones went. I don't know. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Where Jones goes in, he's protesting, and they may have a thumb scan. You know, it's an invasion of our rights. You know, it's totalitarianism on its way, and he raised all kinds of holy hell with the people there at DPS here in Austin, and they promptly took his butt away, arrested him, and took him down. But I'm thinking to myself, man, they, like you said, they already got you a long time ago. Man, there's so many ways they can track you and trace you. I mean, anytime you go on a computer, every keystroke you make, they can look into it. They can see any communications that they can listen to any conversation they want to at any time. You know.
During the last Stuff and Things, I mentioned how it has been admitted that at least the CIA, and I don't know of any other alphabet agencies, I would assume it is the case, love social networking and the Internet because they're listening. And this is what cracked me up. They're reading it, but it was also said in the story, and listening to broadcasts. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, really? Listening to broadcasts? Well,
now let's say something nice about them, Biz.
Yes. I love you. I know you're only doing this for the money. Nah, so I mean, but when Lady Viz told me that, I'm sitting there going, you know what? What is the purpose of this? When you gave me a license in 1968, that person who showed you that birth certificate is the same person now. So what is supposed to have changed because of terrorism?
Nothing.
You know, it's just when he's like, and it's the same thing. Oh, and I got to tell you this, and we'll get out of here.
Okay.
This is the best. At St. Leo's, there's a librarian whose brother is a trucker out of New York. And he got into the TIPS program. You remember that?
Yeah.
Where if you see something, say something when you're on the road?
Yeah.
Beautiful, right? Great American. He goes to fly down from New York to see his sister down here in Florida. He's on the no-fly list. But it gets better, and
I shouldn't be laughing, but damn, you know, that's crazy.
But it gets better. About a year or two later, after I stopped working at Leo's, I came in, because I go to the library a lot. And I ran into her. We were chatting up, catching on old times. And I said, how's your brother doing? And she says, fine. I'm going, did he ever get that thing straightened out with the no-fly list? She said, finally. She goes, but he went on to fly again after getting cleared, and he was on the list again.
Oh.
So twice they banged him. And this is a guy that volunteered his services for the TIPS program.
You know, the thing that gets me about the social media thing with Facebook and all that crap is not only do they get a total profile of you, but they get a profile on your friends. and everybody, who's corresponding with you. In other words, they can develop a whole profile of a network of people that they want to investigate. It's like, and it just builds on itself exponentially. Every time you start putting more data in there and updating and upgrading all of that, they have an even better data mine there,
Absolutely.
They're building, and the funniest part about it is people are loving this crap.
Yeah.
They're doing it to themselves. You're building your own FBI, NSA, CIA,
dossier. Yep.
All the alphabet agencies, and they can trade all that information anytime they want. And I mean, they probably got some supercomputers working overtime, to catch up with all the updates on the net.
Yeah. Yep. It reminds me of a line that they didn't mean the way I'm going to use it, but it just seems so apropos. The band, in their song Ophelia, the one line that sticks with me, it goes, "They got your number, scared and running, but I'm just waiting for the second coming."
Ophelia.
Of Ophelia, honey, where have you gone? All right, stop coughing.
Well, I wish I could. Golly.
We just want to share with everyone that Larry, in fact, is not dying as far as we know, but he has allergies.
Well, it's. I am planning to move to Arizona.
Yeah, well, there's nothing.
I don't know.
With your luck, you'll be allergic to rocks. Rocks and dirt. You're allergic to it.
Oh man.
All right.
I wish somebody killed the cedar trees in the Austin area. I will contribute money.
Oh, well,
gosh,
that's
I just
another.
love having allergies. They're wonderful.
Okay, I said I wouldn't do this. I'm going to do it. Talk about trees. Here's another great story. There's some kind of blight going on in the Northeast. It isn't the gypsy moth this time. It's something else.
Uh-huh.
And it's a certain kind of tree they feel is especially susceptible to getting something, and therefore is a threat. Can you see the metaphor here? That these trees are susceptible to disease, and so to say the other trees that aren't, these trees have to be leveled, even if they are not found to be carrying this, whatever it is, disease.
Oh.
And some guy, they did a soundbite with some guy who says, he goes, great. He goes, I got 2,000 trees on this property, and they're going to take them all down so that it doesn't infect somebody else. And I'm like, holy crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, we're doing this for your own good, Luke.
Yeah.
All right, listen.
You're being so good to me, Captain.
Like, stop being so good to me. What we have here is value to you communicate.
Now, I can be a nice guy, or I can be one mean son of a bitch.
All right, we're getting giddy, and I'm going to get an email from Jeff.
Well, you need a little adolescent humor in there. I mean, the subject matter is a little dark.
Well, it's true. But Jeff Long is going to email me again going, how dare I have these kind of conversations with anyone but him? Because we went all over the world that time.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
I'm sorry. I hope he doesn't get jealous. But
Stop, Jeff. No, all right. Maybe you'll come on before Thanksgiving. In fact, if you come on a week from now, it'll be the last really kind of official thing I'll do before I go into hibernation till January 1st.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll see. I've got some other stuff to talk about in this same vein. And gosh, I apologize to the audience and everybody else, all the ships at sea about the coughing, but I just got an allergy problem here. And hopefully it all came out.
Well, put your head in a plastic bag and tie it at the bottom, and you won't have that problem. So,
don't have any problem.
No, that's it. That'll be the end of all your...
or at least nobody around you will have any more problems.
All your earthly ills will be solved.
Yeah.
Or else become a Scientologist.
You'd be like one of these cults, we all get together and put plastic bags on our head and wait for the interplanetary vehicle from the planet Xenon or Uranus, or, well, somebody's Uranus. Anyway.
I like the way it used to be said. Well, you remember the Hale Bob guys always had the same sneakers?
Yeah, yeah.
What's with that?
Funky haircuts, too, man. And they all had that unisex look, Like, man. That'd be kind of tough at a party, or trying to pick up somebody, going out to the nightclubs, because you don't know whether it's a boy or a girl, and you may not even know if you are.
Well, I'm not dumb, but I can't understand why she talks like a woman and walks like a man.
Yeah, it'll be Lola all over again.
There you go.
That's a great song.